Right, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third and final Falls Awareness Week webinar hosted by the Falls Prevention Network and supported by Medline. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded, so if you have colleagues not able to join, they'll be able to pick up the session by the Join Now link on the webinar email that we've sent out earlier this week. We will also post it on the Medline UK and Ireland websites and also in the Futures NHS forum. So everyone will be on mute throughout the session, so just please put your questions into the Q&A panel that you'll see at the top of the screen, and we will come to them at the end. I will now hand over to Julie Windsor from NHS England to introduce this session. Right, hang on, let me just put you on screen, Julie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, lovely to virtually see you again, and special welcome to those of you that have come back a week after we'd hoped to give you this presentation. So I really appreciate those of you that have joined. So I'm not going to take too much of your time, Mark, because I'm sure you're interested to hear what Carrie's going to say, but just to let you know, those of you that are part of the Falls Network on the Future platform, if you're wondering where we get the topics from for these webinars, just to say that we watched to see the most commonly asked questions and the things that people were most interested in. So we've lifted the topics for the webinars this time around from that. So if you're ever thinking, I just write stuff on there and, you know, I'm not sure if anybody's really listening, they are listening, even if you don't get a response to your question, and I know some things are more popular than others, we are watching to see and also looking to see where we might plug a gap for knowledge and education. And this is one of those occasions. So I'm going to hand straight over to Carrie. Carrie will be able to introduce herself far better than I, but Carrie and I have known each other for a while. And I know this is a fantastic work that she's been doing over in Mid and South Essex, and it's her pet topic of toilets. So without further ado, handing over to Carrie.
Mm-hmm. Right, there we go. Hang on, Carrie. I'll just put you on full screen. Right, I'm hoping you can see that.
Right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much after the gremlins in the system last week for coming back. So it is true, Julie and I have known each other as Falls nurse specialists over a period of years now. And to introduce myself, I started my nurse training 36 years ago in 1989 at the Whittington in North London. And for most of my career, I have worked in care of the elderly as a staff nurse, as a ward sister. And since 2010, I have been a Falls nurse specialist. It's so long ago when I started, I was called a Falls prevention nurse, but we very rapidly understood what ageing and clinical frailty does. And so now we are Falls nurse specialists. And what I'd like to talk to you today is about inpatient falls and how inpatient toilets are used, and a project I am doing where I believe I have some solutions for some of the falls that happen overnight. So I'm not going to run my slides because I don't think I can do the technology and speak. But I am going to say, if a bit of me is still going to be on screen, I have got some notes I'm going to be looking at. So if I am looking sideways, that is what I'm doing. All right. So without much ado, it is called the Toilet Runway Project. And I was about to say, so it aims to understand safe and effective use of ward toilets during the day and the night, mainly at night, whilst minimising the risk of deconditioning. So on to the next slide. So what I did was I spoke to the library in the hospital, and they did a literature search for me. And in the literature search, I have discovered there have been multiple studies all over Europe, America, some from England, not that many, got to say, looking at the effect of lighting and how that affects the older person on nighttime trips to the toilet. And so I've got a bit of a hyperlink if any of these slide sets do ever get sent out. Or you can email me and I can send that, or just go to your own library, because it's absolutely amazing. So on the next slide, we can see that the content of some of the studies, they literally look at gait characteristics. So for someone with a normal gait, if it is dark, the gait widens and the steps shorten, and the torso begins to go over the top of that person. And bearing in mind, as humans, we stand on about 4% of our surface area, with 2/3 of our weight, 2/3 off the floor. Anything that puts us off our central centre of gravity isn't a good thing. There has also been studies that has said that in a darker environment, when the person goes in their dynamic movement from sitting to standing, the weight transference is slower. So again, that gives us more truncal sway, more opportunity to fall. Then they've had a look at the type of light, whether it's LED light, old-fashioned light, and the lux value of the light as well. So other things that we can't control in the hospital setting, like the optimum floor plan for where someone's bed should be, how far away the light should be, how far away the toilet should be, with night lighting has been looked at as well. So on the next slide, I thought if I'm going to be talking about lux, I should probably explain what lux is, because to be honest with you, until a few years ago, I have thought about light in terms of colour, brightness, you know, am I in it, am I not in it? And I grew up in the 70s and lux was soap. But actually, lux isn't just soap. Lux is a measurement equal to 1 metre of a square surface being lit up by a single candle a metre away. So for context there, sunlight, will it vary during the day, and direct sunlight is 120,000. So gloomier days, 32,000, and 100,000 would be an average day. So if you're sitting by a window in the day, you've got about 3,000 lux coming to you. But if you're in the middle of a room, that rapidly drops to 200 lux. And by moonlight, you've got the lux of about 1/2 lux illumination. So next one, please. So why am I doing this? So I have carried out many an environmental audit as a ward sister and also as a falls nurse. And as a falls nurse, I look at signage, I look at call bells, I look at flooring, I look at different colours. But the one thing I always do is I look at it during the day. But then at the end of every month, I provide my report. And when I go in every morning to a daily job, I pick up people that have fallen overnight. And I know that I have a 50-50 falls during the night and during the day. So if I'm caring for my patients in the night as well as the day, surely my night environment should be as welcoming and orientating as my daytime environment there. And I also propose that the toilet is the most common reason for one of our patients to mobilise. Their day rooms are becoming less and less as the needs for bed increase, and we don't have drink stations, and so really trips to the toilet are what our patients are doing there. So let's talk about the ageing eye. So we know scientifically people start falling from the age of 65. It's there in the World Health Organization falls guidance. It's there in the NICE guidance. It's really unfortunate for our younger members of staff because their pension doesn't start at 65 either. But either way, the ageing eye does come with the fact that our older population are more likely to fall. So the patient group that I cover, 70% of my falling people are over the age of 65. So with the eye, we do unfortunately have drooping eyelids, and that will lessen the amount of light that will get to the back of the eye. Our lenses get less flexible and harder, and that means that when we go from a dark to a light setting, we have a momentary blindness, and we know that how we balance is by seeing a horizon, our inner ear, and our proprioception back to the body. So if we have a temporary blindness going from a dark bay to a lit corridor, that's one of the areas where we're more likely to fall on our journey to the toilet. We also get fatty deposits into the cornea, and this can make things seem more yellow. We have smaller, less reactive pupils, and all of us that have had to do neuro-obs, we know this with our older people. And people in their 60s need 3 times more light for comfortable reading than those in their 20s. And I'm definitely seeing the more tech-savvy older people are preferring to read off iPads because they're finding the backlit illumination is better for them. And older eyes produce less tears. That's not really anything to do with the nighttime stuff. That's just part of our academic knowledge there. So on the next slide, I have got 3 months of my data for the hospital I work. We're in a 3 hospital trust. It's just one site, and I've got June, July and August. And of course, these are the months that have got the brighter, lighter nights. And so what I've done in green, that's the long day shifts, and in blue, we have the night shifts. So we've done this by shift time for our nursing staff. So during the day, we have less falls in mid-morning, where we have a lot of other staff on the wards, don't we? The consultants, the doctors, the physios, the therapists. We have lots of people there. After lunch, we have a peak, and I don't know if that's coinciding in the therapists and everyone going for their lunch at the same time as then patients having a bit of a postprandial moment as they try to go and get their toilet in before a snooze. But you will know within your wards how your energy go, because you can't make a blanket statement about 26 wards and they all have the same energy, because they won't. And then we have a look at the night shift. So I don't really have any peaks until the very end 2 hours of my night shift. So what you can see where it says 6 a.m. So I've started that at 1 minute past 5 until 6. And then the next one is 1 minute past 6 until 7. And I've talked to a lot of nursing staff about this. And the only 2 things that really seem to be the biggest provoking feature that we can think about for this is that we've got the IV drugs going on. So we lose 2 nurses at a time into a treatment room to do the IV drugs. And then we have patients naturally waking up in more volume to go to the toilet. Then we have more opportunity while people are mobilising that may fall down. So on the next slide, I then suddenly thought, well, when does this night shift start? Because I have been producing these falls by day and night and saying they're 50-50 quite religiously based on nursing shift times. And in my career, nursing shift times have changed. So in my earlier career, my night shift would have started at 9:30 at night, whereas I don't do them anymore. But should I do them now, my night shift would start at 7 to 7:30. Big difference, isn't it? 2 hours. So I thought, well, really, it's all about the patients, isn't it? And our environment. So is it when it gets dark outside? Is it when we put the nights out? And have we ever asked the patient, when does the night start for you? Especially now that we're bringing our night shifts in earlier. So then I started having a look at other things that are beyond our control that affect our environment. So on the next slide, you will see that I've put my June temperatures. Now we're in Chelmsford. I've taken it from the Met Office as the mean temperature for the day. So in blue, we have the temperature, and in the orange, you have the amount of falls. And I've been doing this on and off since 2018. And I have repetitively found that when the temperature outside of the wards gets to definitely 20, but 100% when it gets 25 plus, because we can't cool the wards down in as much, our falls do go up. And I know that we have not got the same sort of falls that you would find happening in country parks or on beaches from people that have been exposed to heat, because our patients aren't dehydrated and hypovolemic and collapsing. Our patients have been in a very hot environment where it's been quite difficult to sleep, where things are disrupted. And what we have got this knock-on effect of extreme heat on people with clinical frailty that don't have enough reserves to keep the vitality up when everything else is being chipped away, is my proposal. Really, really happy to hear in chats what other people think. And over the next 2 slides, you will see that I've did July, and you can see we've got the same kind of following there. When you get above 25, the falls go up, and we have August as well. So of course, this isn't something that we're going to be able to do in the winter months, because we can control the inside temperature when the outside temperature drops. But I am proposing I'm going to have a different look at what happens in winter months a bit later on, when we have some slides there. So let me just catch up with myself. So let me talk to you about a previous project and why Julie is alluding so much I'm obsessed with toilets. So I found, when I was having a look at the location of my patient falls previously, that 20% of my falls were occurring in the toilet location. But when I had a look at the shared characteristics of who was falling within the toilet setting, it wasn't the same as the people that were necessarily falling on the wards in the bay by their bed. So I then became very curious. Why is this? Have I got different toilet users? What is happening? And so I did look at the dignity and the privacy and wall culture. And actually, I had to look at our entire culture about toilets, because in the medieval times, people were much more open and they had communal toilets. And it was only from the Victorian times and the Industrial Revolution that toilets really started to come inside. And it wasn't until the U-bend was invented to stop methane gas coming back into the house and causing explosions that we got toilets inside the house. And even today, when we have a house built, it's the only place where there's a lock. We expect to have private time in a toilet. So fascinating. So anyway, we did environmental audits, and on the next slide, you'll see that we audited patients and staff. We surveyed them in a qualitative survey, and quite frankly, when you're doing projects like this, that's the only type of survey you're going to get, because you're not going to be able to find 2 patients that are the same to do anything quantitative in that way. So the patient said they used the toilets because of privacy and dignity, to maintain their independence, and they had so many ideas on how to upgrade the toilets that I do believe that these patients should be on every architectural group for any new built hospital in the future. The staff feedback on use of bathrooms, it mimicked it. They wanted their patients to have privacy maintained, and they wanted their dignity maintained. The staff also had a lot of ideas about the environment, but they felt actually that where we worked, there was good accessibility. They could get into the toilet with their patient. That wasn't a problem. But they also said they had workload issues, and sometimes they were worried about the safety, acuity and dependency of the patient if they were going to be able to manage in that environment with the patient there. And they were very keen on patient request. So that brings me back to the toilet runway project of 2025. So I was asked by the QI team in the hospital to have some smart aims, and my goodness me, that gave me a few weeks of intense conversations and head scratching. So what I came up with in my specific was, can my patient access the ward toilet safely at night? And I'm going to start using lighting as my nocturnal signage. I'm going to measure it by using qualitative survey on patient concepts and perception pre and post putting the lighting in. And I said initially I was going to ask 5 staff, but we've done like a trial run on wards that aren't directly involved in the project, so we wouldn't muddy any waters. And we now think that we are going to have different grades of staff and get their opinions and increase the patient base there. And it is relevant because, like I said, we've got 50% of the falls at night, and we did have a bit of a delay due to workforce capacity issues on both my side and the QI side as well, but we're steaming ahead, so I have got things to tell you. So where did we start? So I started by doing the groundwork thinking, getting the literature, reading the literature, and then at a senior nurse meeting attended by the sisters and the matrons, I spoke about it, and areas were asked if they wanted to participate, because I find willing volunteers are the best volunteers when you start these things. And I was really, really excited to find out I've got orthopedics, so that's amazing. So I've got lots of people with altered mobility. We've got post-op. We know that we have a high proportion of care of the elderly in that area. We are at Burns Hospital, and I was really interested that Burns wanted to be part of it. Obviously, a much smaller ward and a lot less falls. So in many ways, you might get your biggest successes in these areas, and care of the elderly, and of course, very traditional to who falls over. And so I was delighted in there. And so moving on to the next slide, what I did, I gave them their own pre-QI project pack. I had a look at the 6 months of falls that they had all had, and I could look at the age of the patient, the time of day, the location, and also if the person had altered cognition or not, because we all know that this is very relevant when we're trying to orientate patients to an area, or if we're trying to safety net them or give them information. And that's where with more altered cognition, the greater the signage and the more power things like lighting has, because they'll be able to go on muscle memory then, rather than specifics that we're giving to the patient. So on this next slide, the environmental audit, I applied the same 3 principles of audit to each area. Each area gave me a lead, and we went round together and did the audit, and then again the audit was written up, and the ward areas have got that, as have the QI project. And I wanted to know, really, for me, it was my like taster of what the ward was. How many beds have you got? How many consultants do you have? What is your patient? How many staff do you have on shift? What are your staff times? You know, what can I get about you? What do patients need to know when they come to your areas? So that was really quite interesting. So looking at the next slide, we looked first and foremost, of course, how long is your walk to the toilet? Because I think we very underestimate that illness fatigues people, or edematous legs makes someone's legs tired to walk. And these aren't features that we talk about a lot when we're talking about multifactorial falls, you know, lack of sleep, heavy legs, fatigue. But when you have high clinical frailty, these are the sort of things that's enough to make you fall down. So I use my surveyor's wheel. I can't tell you how many times a physiotherapist stopped me to see if when they did the time to get up and go, just by using their steps, I could measure to see how near they were to 4 meters. And it created a lot of interest. So what I did was I took it from the patient's chair to where they needed to walk to the toilet. And on the next slide, you can see I then looked, and I did a health and safety diploma many moons ago. And I remember in a public space, you have to have so many toilets per people, don't you? And I was very interested to see, bearing in mind I'm measuring how far people have to walk to a toilet, how many toilets are shared by people. So if you get to your first toilet and it's occupied, do you walk back? Do you stand? Do you keep walking? You know, how far do you have to keep walking? Because we don't have 100% single occupancy rooms with ensuite toilets. So that really was an issue. And when you have a look, we didn't have anywhere for the patient to wait and to rest. So we weren't really thinking in hospital terms about the effect of that either. And then on the next slide, so this was also a feature in the dignified throne. And I don't know if it's just me, but the hospitals I have worked in, and I haven't just worked in one, it is a repetitive problem, the size and the position of waste bins. So is it in a good place for the patient to use after they wash their hands? Because we want to promote, obviously, good hand hygiene. Because the more twists and turns that we have with a patient, the more opportunity we give them to fall over. So that's what we were looking at again on the audit. And on the next slide, you can see we also looked at our signage. And I'm really keen to know if we do upload information to our patients, because it's overwhelming coming into hospital, especially if it's an unplanned admission and you're moving through the emergency department, maybe an assessment area onto your ward, and then suddenly in your bay, and you've got to remember lots of staff's names and you're not feeling great. So do we let you know by signage where the toilet is? Because it's quite basic, isn't it? You know, and then also to have a look, is the signage dementia appropriate? So then, of course, we can't be doing a lighting project without actually looking at the lighting. And of course, I was a bit on my back foot because I was doing this audit during the day, and I will come back and do the audit at night. So we looked broadly at what would be the lighting for the patient. So some areas have automatic lights that go on as the patient enters into the toilet area. Some have then pull cords that the patients need to use. So we were having a look, we were bearing that in mind as we were doing the lighting. And also, if we were going to leave toilet lights on, were they going to shine into where patients slept? Because one thing that was very strong in the literature that I read beforehand was, if the light's too bright, you disrupt your patient's sleep, and then you're having another problem because you're having someone who's sleep deprived, and that will also make them fall down and increase the likelihood of delirium. So I always find it useful if I'm doing an environmental project, on the next slide, to take photographs, because photographs see what you don't see if you look at a place often, you know. And the first time I learned this was when I was a ward sister, and we had to do, you know, like the lean ward, and I'd had to take a photograph of my store cupboard where I knew where everything was. But when we had to look at the pictures, I realised that it was so messy, it was awful. And no wonder doctors couldn't find anything in the cupboards. So we took photographs of the environment, and the intention is to, in the same place at night without a flash, take photographs as well. So when this has had 12 months of being in place, we really can look at differences as well there. So what were the results of my distances? Let me tell you, crazy. So the shortest anyone had to walk was 2.5 meters. That's a nice little walk. And the longest, and this was a standard, this wasn't having to go from one toilet to the next, 23 meters. And 23 meters is longer than most therapy goals for patients. And then one area still had a day room. And if the person was in the day room, it was a 38-meter walk. And you know, that's a long distance for some people there. So on the next slide, we've got the rest stops. So because we were discussing that the distances were further than therapy goals, what we need to do is we absolutely need to think about rest stops and be quite realistic about the ability of our patients to just keep going. So we have looked at places where we can put chairs in place, and they can either wait for the toilet to be free, or they can build up their energy to walk back to bed, or even better, if they're having a preventing deconditioning walk up and down the ward, just somewhere to rest. So we also said, as a result of it, we're going to make sure that the chairs are going to be different colours, wildly different colours to anything else, so they don't get moved and they're identifiable to staff if they do migrate into other areas. And the therapists are much big support of that one. Then the signage results on the next, is it waste bins, the next one? The waste bins result was that we have every waste bin in every size and they're all metal. So we've spoken to infection control, and ideally they would like the plastic bins with the rounded edges, but there's a cost impact to that as well. We realised that we had too many yellow bin waste, and we could probably put that straight into the sluice and reduce the amount of bins in each area. And also, because we do have pedal operated bins, what we need to do is have the bins near a handhold, because we're asking patients to go on 1 foot, so that we know that's only 2% of their surface area, and it's quite a wobbly thing to do. And not everyone can do that. And I have even seen people trying to put their foot through their walking frame to try and activate a bin. So obviously we need to get this right for that. So next slide, please. Oh, we're on to signage now. So with the signage, we realised that all toilets had signage on the door, and 2 of the areas only had the dementia signage, but no signage was within the bay or in the corridor to indicate where the toilet location is. And when we spoke to people anecdotally, they said that patients walk past toilets to ask where the toilet is. So we know we need to get better signage there. And one of the wards said that their light switch was actually outside the door in quite an unexpected place, but in more than one of the toilets. And so staff were quite used to saying it's on the outside, but we also said that the patients went in and then came back out. So we keep on increasing the walking distance. And whilst that's great if you're getting your steps in, for some patients it's not great because they just haven't got it in them. Next slide, please. So all areas could do low level lighting in the corridors at night, and all patients could have their bed lights on low at night there. And so sometimes it's a glow above the bed already, or we'd have to literally put the lamp against the wall to do that. And we realised that some areas could have the toilet left on. Like I said, that's no problem at all. And so really, we didn't need as many rope lights to go around the toilet frames. And the lights that are proposed are rope lights that go around the toilet frames and have a battery pack. Infection control said these areas around the toilet door frames are rarely touched by patients. They're not a high contamination area, and the batteries are absolutely fine to sit there. So it's just a case of putting some hooks up to do that. And charities have said that they will fund that for us as well. Next slide, please. So with the qualitative survey, we have been hypothesising that we don't ask high quality questions about mobility at the front door. So we're very good at saying patient walks with a frame, but we don't say how far. We don't really capture if they walk with a stick until they get in their car, then they drive. We don't capture how far people have to walk at all. And it definitely really seems to not, in a real life way, get onto our handover sheets and be traded information about how mobile people really are. So we've devised a qualitative survey for both staff and patients. The next 2 slides are those. So the next slide will be the staff survey. So we're asking specifically day and night, because what I realised from Dignified Throne, people, especially staff, do view toilets differently at night. And if you've got a more sick patient, they're much more likely to let them use the bathroom in the day than at night there. So you can see by reading them, we've asked, do you usually walk to the toilet? Have you instructed your patients on how to use the call bell? Any obstacles that prevent your patients using hospital toilets? All of that. And in the next one, rather than just read it out for the patient survey, we have very similar mirror questions. And we were asked to put in by some very curious staff about the products for continence as well. Like, have we, again, high quality question at the front door, not just mobility? Do we accurately get continence? Difficult, isn't it? So we're looking at so many different things with this project there. So we did a trial run, like I said, and we realised that we're going to ask staff of different grades and have those answers to see if we've got any difference between our healthcare support workers and our qualified staff. Next slide, please. So survey results. So our patients have said, and remember these have been the summer months that we did this, that they didn't have any environmental issues. I thought they would do. Only 2 of our patients thought it could be brighter at night. So we're going to repeat this in the darker winter nights to see if it's still the same. The staff are really positive actually about the environment, more than I thought they would be. They were really positive about cleanliness, and they all felt they could get their patients to the toilet with very little obstruction. And I think that's down as well. We have a lot of really good manual handling equipment, and so even if patients can't walk there, we've got alternative methods to get them in that environment. And like I said, we're going to repeat that survey over the winter months to see if the happiness over the brightness changes at all. And on the next slide. Thank you. So now we're on to solutions. Oh, right. Solutions distance to the toilet. So we have got so many issues getting the right patient near the toilet, because we know we've got infection control problems. We have issues with, we can't change older people's beds willy-nilly, can we? Because the more bed changes, the more disorientated, the higher delirium, the higher the length of stay. So all I can say is, where possible, try and match the patient to the distance required and make it part of your decision making when, if you have an empty bed, more than one, and you're getting that handover, because it is really, really difficult, especially when we're having winter pressures coming up and a lot of us are having to have full capacity bed spaces or boarding or whatever. Next slide, please. So we have put our rest stops in, we've got rest places there. So we haven't yet got the formal furniture in place. Like we said, we're trialing it to make sure we've got the right places at the right time on the ward there. So I just did a bit of photography, desperately trying not to get staff or patients into it. And on the next slide, you'll see we've also put, that's a nurse's station on the first slide. And then you can see we've got it by an alcove near a fire exit that also has had some bookcase wrap put on it as well to disguise the door. But these are really bold, and we've taken advice from Alzheimer's Society, from our dementia nurse, and from estates on how to do the signage. So this is the signage that's working for us. Right, so it's not quite the rope light, I appreciate, but this is some lights put around a staff toilet before you think what an awful area for patients. It's just our awful area. So it's not the first time I've successfully used lights. I have been using bright light therapy, which you might know as seasonal affective disorder lamps, for people with delirium for a long time successfully. And we used to have, not used to, we still do, the ability to create a serene side room for patients that had extreme delirium. And by use of lighting around the bed, we found out that this ambient light, by feedback from the patients, stopped their hallucinations coming nearer to them as well. So lighting is really powerful in so many different ways for the patients. And so next slide, please. So where next? I think I've said this about 3 times now. Repeat the survey, because these are the people that's going to tell us the answers. The lighting is going to go in place permanently, and I'm going to monitor the falls over the next 6 months. And in as much as I looked at the temperature affecting the amount of falls on the ward, I'm going to have a look at falls past sunset, meteorological sunset to sunrise. And I'm also going to see if we then have the same rise over the winter months, and have a look at if they have altered cognition more formally in the form of delirium. But we're just going to see if any altered cognition comes into play there. And I'm rewriting my training, and I think the education about the ageing eye to my standard training is going to be valuable and worthwhile, because a lot of my colleagues said they weren't aware of so many differences that occurred to the ageing eye. And I said, yeah, it just goes beyond reading glasses. It's way more than that. So next slide, please. So in conclusion, the value of a night environmental audit is not to be underestimated. And I think if you can do it for the same person, to do it both night and day would be the best. It's a bit like how the same person doing neuro-obs can get the slight nuances. I think with the rise in delirium, we've got to also remember that night shifts and wards aren't always peaceful, quiet slumber, and that people are having disrupted sleep, and our use of lighting and signage will be really quite soothing at the same time as well. It's a very powerful tool, is lighting. It does draw the eye, and it will stop people walking with purpose, but walking the wrong way with purpose there. Ambient level light is so important for the aging eye, because it stops that temporary blindness. And if I was going to have a, like a fire map of a ward, and I could put like a little blob on everywhere I think that's a danger point environmentally for a patient to fall, I put one on every chair, one on every bed, because as we know, dynamic movement, standing, sitting to standing, any change in level is a little point of danger. But I would also put one any point where you go dark to light as well. And the ambient lighting, as I said, as I found out with the serene side room, it assists with patients experience delirium, as it helps maintain orientation. It does reduce the hallucinations. And I do believe, from the next slide, that's me. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm really, really open for any questions that have come my way.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. That's a really, really interesting session. I don't know with Julie, you want to share the Q&A. I mean, there's just to kick us off. There's one question from Anne. It says, in relation to the rest stops, were these able to be height adjustable to accommodate I think that's probably the patient.
You can do whatever you want. We are probably not going to do height adjustable. I've spoken to manual handling, and everyone has agreed that we are going to use chairs with arms, probably more similar to you'd find in a waiting room in the hospital. They're obviously going to be conformant to be wiped down, and infection control will meet the requirements, because we've only got so many places we can buy from. But if you worked in an area where that was dependent, if you knew someone needed that, of course you could. But as a general rest stop, I don't know how it'd work in the areas that I'm using them in.
Yeah, I guess difficult one, isn't it? Because you've got to have one size fits all, quite literally, because the way that the patients rotate through service. But I guess if you had a particular requirement for an individual, you could make an adjustment, just as temporary measure, I guess. While other people are thinking about the questions that they'd like to ask, and I'm sure there are many. Thank you, Carrie. That was, as ever, an excellent and really thought-provoking session.
Thank you.
I've got a really, really dark question, because I love your surveyor's wheel. I love the fact that the physios were trying to wrench it out of your grasp to measure their timed up and goes. Where did you wrench your surveyor's wheel from, or was there some poor Colas employee standing without one in their hand at roadside somewhere?
I mean, I went to B&Q. 27 quid.
27 quid.
Yeah.
Because it strikes me as well. I mean, that whole story about how, and I know you surveyed staff and you surveyed patients, and I've got questions about that as well. But what I really liked about that approach was about it brings in other dimensions of the falls risk assessment. So we mentioned the timed up and go, but there's the whole questioning around distance, and we've all fallen foul of, and I certainly have, of when you say to a patient, "Can you walk?" and you mean 2 meters to the toilet, they think you mean up Mount Snowdon or Mount Ellery, as we're supposed to call it these days. So it's about that difference in perception, is about what we're getting at here, and I think, I mean, if anybody's been a patient, you look down that corridor, you think, "Oh God, I've got to get from all the way here, from all the way over there, dodging everything as I go, and there's absolutely nowhere. I'm never going to make it. I'm not even going to try." because there's nowhere for me to have a stop. So I think the rest pit stops are genius.
I mean,
so
we may need to even rename them, you know, if it's not specific enough that it's please sit here and rest. You know, we might have to make it even more clear. But you're absolutely right. You know, I had major abdominal surgery, and when I got up, it was my wound, it was the feeling of the anesthetic, you know, and yeah, I could get to the toilet, but it wasn't without effort.
No, so see, for the best of us, it would defeat us. But when you can imagine if you're, you know, aged, got frailty with delirium, you might not be able to see the distance that you're going. It might just seem like it's going off, you know, into the far distance, and you don't know. The other question that sort of struck me was, I might have missed that because you gave us such a lot of rich information there. Whose idea was it to put the rope lights around the door? Did that come from staff survey or from the patient survey? I was just interested.
No, I can't say this is MSc generated. I literally read an article where they did it in Denmark in a care home. And so it was a case study. And I thought, I think this has legs. I think we can translate this to our environment, but let's do it slowly and surely, and see what else is out there about lighting and the value, and do it as a proper grown-up QI project.
Because I've seen before, I don't know if others have seen, and I use them myself in one of my clinical lifetimes ago, sort of a fluorescent strip that goes around the light switch, because that was another thing, that you had a light coloured wall with a light coloured light switch base, so the patients couldn't see which was, and they were literally feeling all around the walls for where's the light switch. So a fluorescent marker around, but I think the difficulty we had there was finding something permanent that the infection prevention folks were happy about. And that was, so it's this sort of the same theory, I suppose, that you've got a light going around. And how about the cleaning folk? Are they happy with it? Because I can imagine I've had some pretty fearsome cleaning supervisors in the past. They were all good with it.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's encased. The LED lights are encased in a plastic tube rope, so it's wipeable.
All right.
So we have no issues. And I've learned, because I'm long in the tooth, start nothing without talking to infection control.
Yeah.
So they're my first port of call, and I didn't even think about it. They think about high touch areas, and they said no, that part of the door is not a high touch area, and whatever. And listening to what you were saying about using your fluorescent to guide the eye through, that's been very similar to a lot of the stuff that we did right from the noughties, when we first learned about contrast colour in dementia, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, this is where we're sort of held back slightly by the way walls are painted, because you could have got that in paint around the light, and then it would have been easy to clean, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I did manage, I think, on one area when they were having an upgrade, and we did manage to get in there just in the nick of time to get the door frames painted, and a very different colour to the walls. But you've got to time it right. I love going back to sort of involving therapy staff, and I mean, I'm loving the cross-cutting themes there about those of you involved in the National Audit of Inpatient Falls. This is about, increasing safe mobility now and prevention of deconditioning. And I'm liking this. And I was thinking about the big differences you found in the distances between the person at the base and their toilet, nearest accessible toilet, and about how that was vastly different to even the therapy goals. And I wondered what sort of interest you had from the therapy teams about sort of that finding, really, how stark that was. Have they had any feedback from them?
I always get on well with therapists, but they were fascinated, and I've had so much support and buy-in from occupational therapists, because they love the function and use of a bathroom and how the brain works to get there, and then from the physiotherapists, from literally how far people walk and how many times they have to sit down, get up, the location of the bins. It's been really interesting to see which part of this QI project interests which type of therapist, but the buy-in has been 100%. There's not been one therapist that said wasting your time, you know, this is ridiculous. So yeah, really interesting. And I think as well, what's come out of it and what's previously from Hot Debrief is that very often therapy goals and what nurses need patients to do are not the same. Sometimes they get blurred. And we can look at, you know, or the therapist walk the patient 20 meters. It doesn't mean we're going to walk them 20 meters every time, because the therapist did it with a lot of verbal supervision. They had someone with a chair behind, and we've got someone with a full bladder who wants to get to the loo
now.
Yeah, so I think it's probably time to start having some like really honest conversations about how we come from different approaches, but we all have the patient at the centre of our practice.
Thank you. We've got a whole flurry of questions now coming in. So Ruth, I'm just going to pick some that are sort of very related to the topics you've been covering, and if we get time at the end, there's some that are a little bit more on periphery. So Ruth Spedding is asking, have your daytime toilet falls reduced since the rest stops and direction signage? Have you got a sense of that yet?
So on the 3 wards, we've got the rest stops on one of them, and we have had an overall reduction. Oh, bye, Julie. An overall reduction in falls, but it's too soon to say. Too soon to say, but yeah, very much so. I have gone on the ward, so anecdotally, which is never helpful when you're in the middle of a QI project to anecdotally, but anecdotally, yeah, people are sitting on those chairs and they seem to be appreciating them.
Okay, thank you. And Tim is asking, sorry if you missed this bit, but were you having a lot of falls in patients on the way to the toilet, or were they happening in the toilet unwitnessed? And within your review, were you looking at how far from the bed they were falling? Not easy, he knows, to know. They're all unwitnessed, I suppose.
Got to say, distance from bed, I haven't been asking staff to measure that. I'm still concentrating on the look, feel, move primary survey and the correct floor retrieval. Toileting factors I have been looking at, and I've been catching on Datix for a long time, because I know what you're saying, falls in the actual toilet and then toileting related falls, they merge together, don't they? So you have some environmental stuff you need to look at with toilets. So I say about 14% of my falls are in the toilet, and I would say about 25 to 30% of my falls are toileting related, and then we don't know for some of the other ones.
No. Okay, I hope that's answered you, Tim.
It's only as good as the narrative, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So yeah, be as succinct but as fulsome as you can.
Yeah, tell me everything, but not that much.
But not that much, yeah. Many care homes have solutions like this, and special lights that come on with movement, the Nobi lights. Yeah,
I've seen the Nobi lights, yeah. I've seen the Nobi lights on the computer website, and I know that was it one home in, I think, Cumbria have used them. Do you know what the Nobi lights are? So for anyone that doesn't, from my understanding, in the light setting, you have 4 sensors, and it has almost like an infrared grid of the room. And so it can tell if the person in the room is standing up. It can give you 15 seconds of the person's body movements prior to the fall to help you unpick how people fall. It can alert other people that someone's on the floor, but it just gives you like a dot stick man. It's not actual film. And I think if you buy like the complete package, it can talk to you through the sensors to say have another drink, or you know, sit down now, stand up now, something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Kat, we've got a question here from Anonymous. Thank you, Carrie. Congrats on this important project. Did you say that you're also placing lights on the rest places in the ward? They were wondering, how did patients respond to them during the night, particularly patients with dementia or delirium?
Right, no, not sure how to deal with that, because the rest places aren't near tables or plugs necessarily, but that clearly will be something that we aspire to do. But I have got to say, the corridors are ambiently lit at night, so I don't think they're dark enough to sort of need their own light in that same way. But then
Right.
that sort of makes it sound like I then don't need the toilet runway program. I don't know is the answer to that, because all of the chairs so far are near the nurses station that also has their own source of light. But that's really interesting. I think I'm going to add that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, casting my mind back many years ago, where I ran a rehab long stay area, neuro area, and we used to have a bed, a chair, a comfy chair, and a table with a little lamp and a lampshade, and it was the most popular place for patients to head for, because it looked cozy. It looked cozy because they didn't want to go on their own in their bedroom. They used to come and just sit there and watch the world go by. So as you say, it is a real attractive thing, isn't it? So yeah, you must think about the signage of lighting in its own right, I suppose, as being a sign.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anonymous, different anonymous, I'm guessing this time, is saying, thank you, very informative presentation. Do you have any research that supports the use of your serene signed rooms?
Yeah, there's probably about 300 published articles. Again, before I started it, I went to the library in the hospital and had a look at the value, because I'd seen a presentation from the Royal Bristol Infirmary of the use of their bright light therapy in the intensive care unit, and it just sounded logical and it made sense. So I initially only found about 30 articles, but it was enough to buy my first SAD lamp and start trial and error with patients with delirium in the serene side room. And then when we reviewed the project 2 years later, there's about 300 published articles on it. So yeah, bright light therapy, just have a medical review, and there's lots out there.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Alex is asking, not quite toilet related, but has anyone got experience with hybrid versus full flow air mattress and falls rates at night? I would say, if you haven't got that answer to the forefront of your mind, Karen, you may well not have. Alex, can I suggest that you write that in the discussion forum on the NHS Futures discussion area? Because I'm sure if we haven't got the answers, there's bound to be somebody on there that would be looking at it. Unless, Carrie, you've got an answer for us.
No, to be honest with you, I haven't found that the hybrid mattresses, if I've got it right, are the ones where you can plug them in to have the alternating cells. Like, it's the same mattress, you can have it as standard or as an air mattress, but it's not quite the same. I don't find the edges change to a point where I've been concerned, and in the narrative, the falls that's been coming through, but obviously the person that asked this has had something coming through in the narrative to make them wonder about it. So if you're having lots of people say that the mattress is collapsing and they haven't got a steady base to get up from, and that's why they fell, then I'd definitely start talking to the tissue viability and manual handling, and over a period of sort of a month or so, just check every single mattress that someone's fallen off if they're getting off their bed. But it hasn't been something that's triggered with me at the moment, to be honest with you.
So, thank you. So, Alex, I would say, yeah, if you're not already, get yourself on the Falls Practitioner Network and maybe get that on the discussion board. And if anybody else out there's got any support for you, they'll be the place to find it. And I think, Simon, you're also, did you want to say something? I'll end and then hand over to you, Simon, to say where the mopping up bits come into it. So I'll just say personally, Carrie, thank you very, very much indeed for your time today, and certainly come back to have another go in a week after you were initially billed to star. I think everybody will agree that that's been absolutely fantastic and well received. Got some lovely questions, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Simon, over to you.
Yeah, just to echo Julie's comments, really, Carrie, just thank you very much for today's session. Yeah, very, very insightful. And also thank you, Julie, for chairing. Also want to thank Shona and Paul for their brilliant sessions last week and the week before. I think we've been really spoiled with some really brilliant sessions over the last couple of weeks. So you will also, thank you to everyone who took the time to join today, and our rearranged session. So for those that couldn't make it, I know a lot had signed up. The recordings for all these sessions will be available on the Falls Practitioner Network workspace. We'll basically put a post in the discussion forum. We'll put links to all 3 of the webinars so you can easily pick them up from there. However, over the next couple of weeks, we will endeavour to get them loaded up onto the Medline website as well if you're not able to access them from the workspace. So that's it for this year's Falls Awareness Week. Thank you very much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again next year. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheerio.